Thanks for watching this presentation, and don't forget to like this video. Please leave your comments and subscribe to the channel for previous videos and more videos coming to our RailFan playlist.
What I thought we'd do is I'd bring a small collection of my hats and we'll give them away as part of our trivia questions. So we'll kind of start, just have a nice fun conversation about trivia. So for the first prize, we have a Texas Texoma service unit hat. The first prize, and the first person that raises their hand and answers the question right will win this hat. I've got some other cool hats too. So who can tell me, does everyone here have a basic understanding of the big boy steam locomotive? Okay, it may not be fair for those that don't, but I'll have an easy question for you, an easier question. So on the big boy steam locomotives, how many were built in 1941? I saw a hand go up back here.
20, at least of the original ones.
Did I hear the answer? How many?
20.
20, yeah, you got it right, 20, all right. We got the first trivia hat. This young man in the green. So he answered 20, and he is correct. So in 1941, American Locomotive Company, in collaboration with the UP, Union Pacific, designed these locomotives that we'll be talking about today, the 4000 class. The first one was number 4000. The last one built was 4019. And in 1944, there was a need for additional locomotives, and I'd heard different stories over the years, and I'd read different accounts, but there was a potential for them to make more. I've heard 25 more, I've heard different numbers, but they eventually ordered 5 additional locomotives. And so those were, for those of you familiar with the big boy nomenclature, on the underside of the cab, on the engineer's side, fireman's side, there is all the numbers underneath there, and it's 4884-1. So that stands for the 4884. For those of you who aren't familiar with a big boy, it has 4 lead wheels called pilot wheels. We call that an engine truck. 1 set of 8 drivers, which is the same amount of drivers the 844 has, by the way, and a second set of 8 drivers, and then 4 wheels under the cab. And the -1 designated the difference between those 2 classes. And there were actually a few technological differences between the 2 classes, but I'll get into some of those details. Along those lines, let me ask a general question for everybody, and if you could raise your hand, how many people like technical descriptions and technical details? We got one, probably about 50%. So I live in a world where I've always enjoyed mechanical things. I've worked on smaller locomotives and ultimately up with the steam crew for about 21 years now, and I love technical stuff. I can talk about it a lot. And I have so many technical photographs over the years, and many of my presentations are essentially the really technical nuts and bolts stuff. So we're going to change that up a little bit this year, and we've got some video presentations that some of my friends that I've come to know over the years, and my lovely lady Anna, she travels with us from time to time, and other guests take along the way and also in the cab with us. So we're going to be able to split it up a little bit, and we'll have the technical question and answer more toward the end of the presentation. We'll kind of let people keep walking in here. We don't want them to think that we're leaving them out on anything. So the next trivia question, who can tell me what's the boiler pressure on the K36 locomotive? Sorry. No, the boiler pressure on the UP 844. Anybody? I saw the hand right there.
300.
300 PSI. Very good. For extra credit, what's the boiler pressure on the big boy?
Also 300.
Also 300 PSI. So what that means for those who aren't really into the technical stuff, 300 PSI, if you're in the Navy, you work at a coal-fired, gas-fired, or a nuclear power plant, that steam pressure is just kind of warming up their coffee. But for a steam locomotive, it's really, really powerful. There were other locomotives, experimental machines over the years where they drove that steam pressure up higher. And what that provides is it allows you to have a smaller piston, smaller machinery components, and what smaller equates to is less mass, less counterbalance, higher speed, efficiency. So when they were developing the steam locomotives, they really got into the weeds and the nuts and bolts. We do the same thing today. I was involved with, about a year ago, did we get him his hat, by the way? Okay, thank you, good answer. I was involved in a request that came through our mechanical department, and they had asked if I would be able to, is Joel Pedersen here? Joel, where's Joel at? He's probably hiding. Joel is a colleague of mine that works in Denver. He's a mechanical manager, just does outstanding work in our locomotive fleet out of Denver. And so he directed them to me. I've got a big shop in Cheyenne, and what they were looking for was a location where they could do some testing. What they wanted to do was test this new turbocharger. So in a diesel-electric locomotive, the diesel engines, which are very advanced by our standards today, but they're really similar to what we had with the diesel locomotives that replaced the steam engines. So what they determined is there's additional horsepower that's going away as heat in the exhaust that's running the turbocharger. And they calculated that they've got 300 horsepower just wasting away day in and day out all day long. Well, the Union Pacific, just like in the days of the steam locomotives, they want to capture that horsepower. So I was involved through helping them out testing this locomotive. So we got it set up outside the shop, and it ran for hours. Luckily, the folks, the good people in Cheyenne are used to railroad sounds. I didn't get any complaints, but this thing ran almost 24/7 for several days while they were testing this neat technology. Those are the neat stories that I like to share, because the big boys and all of the classes of locomotives before them, they share that same determination. And that's the neat thing about, you could call it the American way of life, the American way that we do business and our commerce and our railroads. We're always pushing the envelope. A lot of people talk about our long, heavy trains. Well, I will tell you, if they had the ability to run a 15,000 foot long train back in the steam locomotive days, they would have. It was just more complicated because you've got these big locomotives. How many people have heard the statement that a big boy could pull a train 5 miles long? It's on Last of the Giants, and it's on Wikipedia, I think. Well, the big boys are a lot different than our big modern locomotives today, in that they have fuel and water. Their fuel and water only lasts them about 4 hours. Which leads me into trivia question number 3. Trivia question number 3. And we actually have a cool hat over there. We won't do one of the white ones. We've got another one. And this one says Brazos. Does anyone know what that significant name means, Brazos? The Brazos River Valley, we've got a big rail facility down there, and that's where we did our boiler wash last year. So we were traveling, we were 84 days in the field. Well, a big boy, like all steam locomotives, can't run forever. The diesel engines we have today, they will run days and days and days. They fill them with fuel, give them a little pat on the head, sign some paperwork, make sure they got oil, and they keep running. So here's the trivia question. How many hours producing full tractive force could the big boy run on 28 tons of coal? That's a tough one, isn't it? Anybody want to take a guess? Carl, I see your hand kind of wiggling there. You, sir? 10 hours? That's a little high. Another one, yes?
I would say maybe 7 hours.
7 hours, a little high. We're getting close. We're warming up here. Yes, sir?
4.
How many? 4. That's it. It's not very long, is it? So by the time you leave, I want to take this opportunity to introduce Jim Ehrenberger. Jim Ehrenberger is a very renowned UP and railroad historian. He hired out on the UP in 1953. So Jim, how long did it take a big boy by the time they came off the coal chute, which is a servicing facility? How long did it take a big boy by the time it came off the coal chute and it got on its train and it departed Cheyenne Yard? Was that 30 minutes?
More than that.
More than that?
Sometimes,
Sometimes more than that.
yeah, I think it's 45.
45 minutes. That's really good, let me tell you. By our standards today, that's extremely good. Our managers and our people that keep track of our metrics would love that. So a big boy has got 28 tons of coal and 25,000 gallons of water, and they top that up and they fill it up to the brim, and the clock starts ticking. Because a steam locomotive doesn't idle. It's consuming that fuel and consuming that water. Works its way over the train. Where's the first place that thing can take fuel and water? West of Cheyenne. 30 miles or so, roughly. Let's see, it's 543, I think, at Harriman. Okay, so 30-some miles. So it can make it 30 miles before it's almost out of fuel and water. That's Harriman. That's not even all the way to Harriman. So you can imagine what the railroad was looking for, a better way. We're nostalgic about steam locomotives. We think they're great. They're fascinating in our world today. That I am representing the Union Pacific Railroad, talking to everyone here about a 1941 locomotive, and the year is 2025. It's a very special opportunity for us. All right, for those of you with the trivia, thank you very much. Good answer. Did you get your hat? You got it? Good, very good. We've got some more over there. We'll do a little bit toward the end. So I'd like to get started here. What time we got here? About ready to go?
10 after 10.
Okay. I want to start by, first of all, thanking the Union Pacific for allowing us to do this. This is a great opportunity. It's a great time for everyone to get together and talk about the fascinating world that we get to live in, that we get to work in. I got a quick question for you people, everybody. Why do you think we do this? Why would the Union Pacific run a big steam locomotive today? Public relations, yeah.
Teaching history.
Teaching history. Sharing our heritage.
Keeping the old history alive.
Keeping history alive, that's right, yeah.
Merch sales.
Because oftentimes with, because it's cool, is that what I heard?
Merch sales.
For what?
Merchandise sales.
Merchandise? Boy, I wish we had a larger footprint merchandise-wise, but we really don't. There's a lot of opportunities there. We used to sell a lot of souvenirs. But it's, this is the only railroad, the only Class 1 railroad that does this. The Canadian Pacific in Canada, they ran their locomotive, beautiful machine, all the way down to Mexico, because they're such an amazing connection to the past. So I've been with the Union Pacific Steam Program for 21 years. Prior to that, I'd had some other jobs in the railroad. I actually helped the Canadian Pacific with their locomotive. So I've been around the country on a steam locomotive a lot, and they turn heads. We know that the rail fans are going to like it. They're going to show up and appreciate it, but there are so many people outside of the rail fan community that can connect to this concept of this world's largest locomotive coming to a town near you. It really is, it's amazing. I have seen crowds of people that you would expect at a rock concert or a farmer's market. We go rolling into a community and there's 10, 15, 20, 25,000 people. Where do they park? How do they get there? It's just, it boggles the mind. So, all right, let me get started here. I want to introduce Anna. She's here helping, and she puts up with a lot of this stuff, and it's a full-time job for me. And there's so many friends that I have. So if I don't introduce you, I will eventually. I've got John Stravino. John's on my crew. I've asked him to come in, and he's going to tell a few quick stories about what he does. And I have some very good friends that have helped me over the years just archive this special journey that we're on. And I'd like to introduce Derek Brown and Eric Lindgren. And I'd like to, if they would, just take a few minutes and tell us how they got started in this. But before I hand them the microphone, I want to share with you how I've come to know them. On Facebook. I've been on Facebook, I don't know, 5 years now. I kind of like it. Facebook is what you make of it. You can argue with a lot of people and you can go nowhere, or you can just enjoy it. And I find myself scrolling a lot. And I come across these amazing pictures and the talent. So here's a couple of guys that will get up at 3 in the morning and go, one of them will drive and go pick the other one up, and they'll go chase a passenger train. And it's because of that that I've named them Auto 1 and Auto 2. For those of you that know Otto Perry, he's an old-time railroad photographer that in the 1930s, Jim, I got that right, the time frame Otto Perry?
Otto Perry? I think it's
Yeah.
Otto Perry?
Yeah, so here was this young man that just liked trains, and he'd ride his bike and his motorcycle and drive a car, and he got to the neatest places, but he was one of the very early individuals that was archiving the history that we have thanks to him. So Eric, would you mind, tell us just a few minutes of how you got into this and what you do?
I feel like Joel Whitburn here. Good morning, everybody. When did I get into this stuff? I was about 8 years old, and I just, same fascination my son has with this. He's here today with me. He's 10, and I was just really enthralled by the trains. I thought they were fascinating machines, and kind of an illustrator and an artist. And it just has been a focus for me to put my skills to work, as a hobby. And so far for me, it's just a hobby. And thankfully, Ed, you decided that you needed somebody to come and take pictures. So it was kind of nice. Like, yeah, sure, I'll come by. So that's kind of how that worked out on that. And hopefully I'm doing okay. Hopefully we're doing all right. And Derek, it's your turn. If you want to come up. I did want to mention about the model trains.
Yes.
The model trains thing. That's where Ed found me. He's looking at these photos. I'm an O-scale model railroad. I do 148, not necessarily 3-rail toy trains, but I like the scale, authentic stuff that has a lot of detail, and I want to make them look as realistic as possible in a photograph. So I started setting these things up to do paintings, reference, and it turned into, hey, the models look good, why not share those? And that's kind of where I think I caught your attention, because I'd never seen a photograph of it in color of that type of prototype, and there it was. That's a model train. So that was kind of fun.
So let me share real quick.
Yeah.
So what he'll do is he takes a model train to a location along the railroad. So actually right next to the railroad track, and using the backdrop, the actual mountain scene, and he'll position his train. And I had to zoom in on it. It was so good. It was just beautiful work.
Yeah, they call that forced perspective in the art community.
One of them was the Denver and Salt Lake.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was the Denver, Salt Lake, and Malley 2660. I took it up to East Portal, and he was absolutely convinced it was real.
Wow, that's a good picture.
Anyway, I'll introduce you to Derek Brown. We're kind of like work together a lot, and he's, as you might know him as the master of the sunrise. But here you go, Derek.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be able to share a few videos and some photos. My name's Derek. I go by the name of Buffy if you're on railpictures.net. I've actually sold here some of my prints, the canvas prints, if you bought any of those. I'll second the kudos to Eric and his, when we say it's a photograph of a model, that doesn't do it justice. You need to see this. It's so realistic. It's amazing. And he's probably forgotten more knowledge on photographing than I'll ever know. But he and I and William, we like to just take a shot at going after sunrise shots for California Zephyrs. If you're on the Facebook page, Friends of California Zephyr or Friends of Amtrak, you've probably seen some of my sunrise shots, and we've got just a killer shot this morning. And it's just fun. I was always into planes, trains, and autos, but I never photographed trains until about 2014. Before that, it was air shows and car races. And then now I've gotten the bug, and it's been fun. And kudos to not just Ed, but to John and the entire STEAM team. It's amazing what they do, and I feel fortunate that being in Colorado, I live in Denver, and they're typically coming back through Denver on their East Coast swing. And so in the videos, you'll see photographs of my chases, and especially one year is the first year, 2019, where we were chasing it from Sharon Springs, Kansas to Denver wearing shorts And when you left Denver, it was the most amazing snowstorm Denver's had. And so we've got some really interesting photographs for that. So I put something together. I think we'd like to run it, and it's about 9 minutes long. And then maybe we'll let Anna show you some of her videos. And then we're here to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Derek. So what you'll see here, and I'll keep the talking to a minimum, but we donated some equipment several years ago, and you'll see the 3985, what we call the hospital train, and a very special opportunity to have all 4 locomotives together. And we invited these gentlemen and others to come up and help us archive that with drones and their great photographic skill. So I'm pleased to have this so you can see it now. I dressed as Clint Eastwood that day. that's a good illustration of why the Union Pacific does this. What do you know, a wedding proposal? Who knew? I don't remember doing that. So this is a very historic moment here. In just a few short days, we were moving those locomotives off property, very likely never to be seen again. And at least here. So I'm very thankful that many were able to come up and help archive this as they have. I've run that 3985 quite a few times, and it's a fun locomotive. It's a little bit painful watching it leave, and I had always dreamed of restoring that 5511. So hopefully we'll be able to get it, watch it run someday. I was determined to ride it every mile. And as it worked out, I needed to because we were having some problems with it. We had to earn our keep on that trip. So remember this configuration, I'll talk about that in a moment. The flat car, air compressor, all of those details. Remember those yellow box cars? I want to talk about those in a minute. My home turn in the Denver North Yard. We've got to remind the townspeople of Cheyenne that we're operating the locomotive. The key whistle is a lot different than a horn on a locomotive. Thank you, Eric. Beautiful work. Now here, I don't know which one is next, but I'm going to wing it. Can't quite see the back pressure gauge, but you can see the throttle out pretty hard. 300 psi, 30 miles an hour. Track speed is 35. By rule, we press the grade, which means we have to be 5 miles an hour under that speed when we press. And we're going eastbound on pre-track, which is very uncommon. It was a little convincing to have the dispatcher run us that way. Inside the Hermosa Tunnel. communicate to the fireman by saying the word little. Little. It's our PCC screen. I had to put the engine together. We had the cylinder cocks in the tree, so I got a little oil on my shirt. I think it's still there. Fireman's got the injector on right at 300 pounds. Little, closing the throttle a little bit more. Starting to run the dynamic brake on the diesel. Our duplex air gauges. And we were very pleased to pick up our president, Beth Wyatt. A wonderful executive, great support. So we're just rolling in to pick her up and give her a nice ride into the town of Cheyenne. And here we are. This is on another trip. We're descending into Laramie on track 1. We just come through the Hermosa Tunnel just west of High Siding. So when you run a steam locomotive, you're listening to all of that. So you can tell that I'm actually working the locomotive a little bit. And that gives the fireman, and here we are, another one going through the tunnel. The noise is amazing. On the longer tunnels, when you're working harder, that the heat is dangerous. And requires you to close the windows, close them down a little bit. The stack exhaust coming out of the engine is pushing 800 degrees. And that volume of stack is going to come right down and find your human flesh. That's Kurt running, one of the guys I'm working with to train to sit on the crew. And the engine is smoking because the wind is blowing from the left. So I'm looking at the combination of the smoke from two sides, and it doesn't look right to me, so I'm just going to watch it for a little bit. Always at 300 pounds. You can see the turbine pump pressure gauge, watch that come up. Atomizer gauge. We restored this locomotive, as I'll talk about here in a few minutes. It's just an absolute work of art. The old expression, it runs like a Swiss watch, and it does. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for protecting us. You always want to have more, that you wish that you could archive more. I had, unfortunately, I lost my cell phone last trip, and just something happened. And I had some really neat videos that people had taken. So unfortunately. Beautiful selection of music. Thank you. So this is Eric's production. I made a mistake. The first one was Eric's work. I grew up with this kind of music. I love it. It may not fit with a steam locomotive, but I kind of like it. So, thank you. That's the 5511. We typically don't have an oil can on the 4014. We sometimes do. I'll let John explain that. Bruce. There's John. There's Jimmy. Jimmy's on duty right now. He's up with our support cars in Cheyenne. John and Bruce working a grease gun. And here's Paul Gershill. Where's Paul at? There he is. Paul and Garland. Garland is our ace machinist. He's an artisan with the lathe. I haven't been getting much sleep. That's a hand signal. We're doing some switching. And that's one of our bosses. That's Maureen. She's just outstanding, and that's Austin. And there's Ted, fireman extraordinaire. Not a lot of gadgets and gizmos on our locomotive. It doesn't need that stuff. It's 1940. We were working on the 5511 that day. So what better way to move your old steam locomotive around with your newer steam locomotive? The 14-degree curve going into Denver Union Station. 3985 for those of you that caught that. doing our PTC testing last year. We had the pleasure of having our executive guest aboard on that day. That was a lot of fun memories with them. The front of the big boy is sitting in a 13-degree curve right here. And the big boy cannot go in and out of that part of the shop because the swing out is too close to the door. So on track 4, we can only go in and out on the east end. The Challenger would fit through there, but we had to take part of the running board and make it hinged so we could lift the running board up to move it in and out. And if you forgot, and that happened a time or two, you heard a big crunch and a lot of yelling. This was a great shot. How many people like that new headline? I kind of like it too. Sure helps you see at night. That's excellent. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Beautiful work. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for all the work that you go through to all the time and travel and getting up early to help out with that. So thank you very much. Well, I wanted to make a quick introduction. This is Paul Gershio. So Paul was the gentleman that I was in touch with when I was given the instruction to go find us a big boy. Paul is a long-standing member of the Rail Giants Museum in Pomona, California, and he was part of the decision-making team that I met with. And I could hardly contain myself because I had held this secret in. I had reached out to them and I asked them if I could meet with their decision makers. And you probably had an idea what I was going to ask about. But so we met, we had a quick meeting at a hotel nearby the museum, and as we were walking out to the locomotive, I just couldn't hold a straight face. I could hardly contain myself. I was excited. Professional, serious, but hey, this is a really cool opportunity we have. So I stopped, and then I let the cat out of the bag. I'm here with Union Pacific. We want to restore the 4014. We would like it back. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But along the way, I remember looking at their website, and there's a lot of speculation on the train videos, and Wikipedia. Union Pacific sent teams of people canvassing the big boys throughout the country. No, we didn't. I looked at a few over the years, and I knew that the 4014 was in very good condition from a standpoint of being in Southern California. But the biggest thing is that I knew that there was a likelihood they would return it to us. And after I made that comment to them, I said, we're not going to buy it from you. We're not going to lease it for 99 years. We would like you to return it to us. Will you negotiate with us? And that was on the basis that we started our conversations, and they were so good to work with. And we've adopted Paul. He travels with us nearly everywhere we go. And as he's told me, he had several things he was fascinated with: the Saturn V rockets, the big boys, and other things. So he joined the Rail Giants Museum in 1989 for the sole purpose of being able to care for the 4014. And in my phone to this day, I have his number. The way I put it in my phone is his 4014 protector, Paul Gershio. And so I'm just proud to know him, and so thankful for the organization and everything that they've done to help us, but also the help that he continues to provide us. He's a retired Exxon plant manager, I will say executive. Just a wonderful knowledge base. And also, Teddy, would you mind coming up here for a quick minute? I'd like to have Ted Schulte come up here. Can you hold this for me? So Ted and I go back a ways. I've known Ted since I was 17. We just been friends over the years, and Ted was working in the Denver service unit, hired out in 2006. And I was very fortunate, very blessed to have this opportunity as a manager in 2010. And he was the first phone call that I made because we needed people. We had, regrettably, one of our engineers and firemen, Lynn Nystrom, from those of you that know Lynn, regrettably, we lost him too soon. And I needed a crew. So I called Ted and I said, what are you doing for a few months? And that few months turned into a lot of years. But Ted is an outstanding locomotive fireman. He'd never been on a big locomotive before. I remember the day that he sat down in the fireman's seat of the 3985. He didn't really he wanted to watch a little bit more. But I knew he'd pick it right up. So I said, have a seat. And he goes, I won't watch some more. I said, Ted, sit down. And he did, and he just did an excellent job. And he continues to do excellent work for us. He's officially retired. You know, he comes back and helps us out on occasion, and we're very thankful for that. So on behalf of our crew in the Union Pacific, I know it's a little bit late, you know, steam locomotive engineer Ted Schulte. So this is the certificate of completion. We actually have a training program that I've instituted in the shop, and we've got various courses that we are putting the guys through. And we'd like you to have this, Ted. And I will also say that this is Eric's handiwork on the beautiful logo. I know you can't see it from where you're sitting, but for those of you into UP history, you remember the Big Now, Bigger Than logo in 1969 with the big boy in the Centennial. This is the 844 and the big boy. So Ted, thank you. Ted wasn't able to join us. We had our formal ceremony a few weeks ago, and Paul received his certification, steam locomotive operations. John received his. John is well on his way to steam locomotive fireman, student fireman, and everyone in the crew has one based on their level of achievement. So it's no small undertaking, and there's a lot of people that run steam locomotives in the world. And, but there's few that get to have this opportunity to do that on the main line like we do. So I'm working with somebody, you know, as you know them, like all of us on the crew, we're like a family. It's very reassuring, you know, when you're working together. We've been through a lot. You weren't in the cab when you hit the tree, but when we recovered from that, and you know, the steam locomotive is fully functional, so it works 100%. Which means the fireman is 100% in everything we do. So remarkable job. Well, with that, I have all kinds of pictures here, and what I'd like to do is just kind of start with some questions, if you have any, and then I can refer to my vast catalog of photographs, and we can just have a little bit of dialogue about this great project that we're working on. If you'll excuse my back for a minute here, I'll get logged in. Well, as I mentioned, I have just thousands and thousands of pictures, and I'll start out by this great picture here. I'll make it a little bit bigger for us. So this photograph was taken by Steve Christ out in California. And we have my mentor and best friend, Ed Gerlitz, was out there with us. We've got Walt Lester. Walt is a Vietnam veteran and a member of the Midway Air Carrier Museum. And we were pleased to have him out there with us. We've got myself in Austin, Brent Malota, who's not here today, Bruce Kirk, he's not here either. Kurt's up fishing, there's Don Creer, here's Ted, and here's Paul. So we were moving this big locomotive across the parking lot, And I've talked a lot about that, and it's one of the most fun experiences that I have in my career. I've been a railroad person 37 years. And Ed and I, my best friend, as I mentioned, you know, we would talk about all kinds of things. And when you get older, you kind of retire and you just kind of daydream about all the cool things. Well, I was still younger. And I enjoyed our daydream conversations, but I was like, I really want to do something cool. And so I'm very pleased that we got to do this project. I'll show you a few more pictures here. What I'll do. So here we have the first picture that official picture, and my vision was that I wanted to be able to take a picture of the locomotive and then later take a picture of the locomotive that we gave them. So I was standing on the caboose that was right in front of this locomotive. So here it sat from about 1989 or somewhere around there. They moved the display. So rail giants initially had their steam locomotive display across the parking lot, and they moved it. So for years and years, the locomotive sat up against this bank of trees. And it had a lot of tree stuff and pine needles and all kinds of things in there. If I can't move my mouse here. And I'm just going to scroll through rather quickly and talk about a few things. But here's the caboose that we had. My original idea was to provide them with a more modern caboose. This is actually a Rock Island bay window caboose. UP did use these. And it was a caboose that we had in the shop and we'd use from time to time. It was in pretty good, very good shape actually. And it represented something that I could get my hands on quickly. And so here we are moving the caboose out, and we're going to move it. And that's how we moved it. So this is the Union Pacific, ladies and gentlemen, moving the donated caboose. Nobody asked me questions, they didn't give me a hard time, they just cooperated and they made it happen. And that's what we do. So can you imagine getting the phone call one day, and I put together a comprehensive plan, and what we do is we detail everything. So I'm going to put this caboose on the back of the ROWC, or excuse me, the NP, the North Platte West Colton. And they backed that big giant train, and this is the rear DP. Who knows what the word DP means? Distributed power. So this is a remote control locomotive. Well, I'm not going to put that little tiny caboose in front of that thing, it'll crush it. So there it was, so it rode that thing all the way. And we donated this beautiful locomotive, which is another really fascinating story. I reached out to my colleagues at the Harriman Dispatch Center that manage our locomotive fleet. This locomotive was scheduled for retirement. It was going to be sold at auction. So rather than sell it, we ran it through the Jinx shop, and they did a great job painting it. And then we threw in a boxcar. And the boxcar's got a little bit of a different story, as you can tell from the paint on the side of it. So at the last minute, they requested that, well, really not the last minute, but as we were negotiating, hey, we really need something to store all of our neat archives. So we threw that boxcar in there. We actually had another better looking one, and it got lost, and we needed to make it happen. So that was what I could come up with. Well, it showed up, and it had graffiti on it. So Ted and I, you remember that, Ted? We went down to Home Depot, and we picked up some paint, and I didn't match it quite well enough. So there it is. So here we are moving it in there. And I'm just going to go through these kind of quickly. Here's Ted moving the panel, a track panel there. And that's how we talked about it when I first talked about this with my crew. We have a saying on our crew, and that is, you're going to love it. And what that means is I don't have time to give you all the details right now. Trust me, it's going to work out. So I just say, you're going to love it. So here we are, we go out to dinner, we get a big table at one of the hotels in California, and I have this HO model train and some track, and I begin to tell them, we're going to move it ourselves. And this is how we did it. Our other colleagues provided us with 26 big track panels and all the material that we needed. And little by little, bit by bit, we really got to work on that. So that's how we moved that locomotive. Who best to move it than the crew that's going to rebuild it and run it, right? You just spent a lot of time, and you can imagine what it would cost if we were to outsource this level of work. Look at the magnitude of this project. So here we are, literally, piece by piece, taking this track and putting it together, shimming it with plywood, 2x6s, 2x4s, and we made it work, and it worked beautifully. And of course, you have to turn it around, and it was really a head turner. But look at how nice that track looks. Look at how level we were able to get that. And they have got earthquakes in California from time to time. And you never know when you're going to get a significant earthquake. So we would always block it and chain it and secure it, just in case. There were a few little tremors while we were there. That's something neat. Has anybody ever been in California during a tremor? I remember I was in the hotel room, and it felt like a big, I thought a semi-truck ran into the building, because the whole building creaked. You could feel this little rumble and creak. All I could think about was, oh, I'm going to run out and look at the swimming pool. That's all I could think about. So I opened the door, and the swimming pool, the water's sloshing back and forth. It was neat. So this is a fun experience. We're bringing the locomotive back. So who can tell me, what's the significance of the number of that lead engine?
The wheel arrangement.
Wheel arrangement, 4884. Now, who in the world would come up with something like that? The Union Pacific. And we had this other Pacific Heritage locomotive that was behind us. We wanted to bracket the engine, and not that we needed to. It wasn't going to roll away. It wasn't going to fall apart. It's just a nice way to handle that business. And there's that picture once again. And here we are when we're all done. And part of the deal was, I think Paul might have been the only one that I really told this secret to, but we've got this locomotive and it's currently running. Well, why not just let it remain running? Why take the engine out of it? Why take the motors out of it? Why give them some hulk of an engine? Well, they already have a few other diesel engines, one particular that's a hulk. It doesn't have an engine in it, doesn't have motors in it. So what I did, hello Joe, we left this thing running. It's got a nice set of batteries in it, and they run it to this day. They don't run it on very much track, but it is runnable. So it's a very nice way for the museum to show what they do. All right, well, I'm going to skip through some of these. Dirty boiler scale, this is the 844. And I have got so many pictures through the years. I want to kind of jump through. It's exciting stuff. If anybody has any questions, stop me. We can talk about it. These are the old stay bolts, comparing the new versus the old. This is the fun. This is where we get into the fun stuff. So what do you do when you've got a locomotive that used to run in the 1940s, 1950s? And what do businesses do with equipment that they own? What do we do with our assets? You utilize them. Well, on a railroad, you wear them out. On a railroad, a locomotive is designed to produce horsepower. And it's not just sitting around quietly kind of working throughout the night. This is a robust, hardcore machine designed to produce nearly 7,000 horsepower. Well, that part on the left, this is actually out the 844. You take it apart, you put it together, you clean it, you inspect it. Well, that's what it looks like after it's been in service for a long time. Remember we talked about the pressure, 300 psi? Well, 300 pounds of steam pressure is an awful lot. When's the last time you've been cooking on your stove and you've boiled a pot of spaghetti? How many psi is that? 0. And look at how dangerous that is. So here's a few more pictures, some more neat stuff that we've made. And this is the fun thing that I wanted to do. I've been working on steam locomotives for years, and sometimes it was frustrating that you never had the opportunity to really make it nice and new again. You take the old part, you kind of weld it a little bit and grind it back down and shove it back in there, and it works okay. But on something like this locomotive is going to travel around the country, and that's the beautiful 844. Let me talk about that engine for a minute, because we love the 844. To me, I served in the military. To me, this is Air Force One. This is Union Pacific Air Force One. So when we run this locomotive, it's polished, it's clean, and when you climb into the cab, that's what you see. So if this was Air Force One, what is the 4014? You got any Marines in here? What is the helicopter that travels our chief executive of the United States of America? Anybody know?
That's Marine One.
Marine One. So the big boy is Marine One. That's the 844. Now that locomotive is a wonderful machine. It's the very last steam locomotive the UP purchased. When it was delivered in December of 1944, it had a nice sign on it from the American Locomotive Company. Merry Christmas, Union Pacific. And through good fortune, we still have it, and we still run it. It's a magnificent machine. People love the big boy. So the big boy is kind of capturing some of the spotlight now. We look forward to running this in the near future. It's a great machine. Some before and the after pictures here. Front coupler. Now we cleaned it up. We actually took the front coupler. When we got this home, it was a little bit worn out. And you can see some welds in here. A locomotive has a tough life. The steam locomotive has a tough life. I think it ran into something a time or two, and it knocked, I call them teeth. It literally knocked the front coupler off, and they welded it all back together again. Well, as good fortune would have it, the 4004, which is on display down the street from the big boy, it actually had a coupler that was a little bit better, so we swapped them. So here's a lubricator as it was sitting there all those years, and we took it apart right there. We took it apart, cleaned it up, fixed it up, and that's how we came home with the locomotive, because what that does, does anybody want to take a guess? How about another trivia question? Tell me what this is. Anybody raise your hand? Anybody? John, I see John's hand up. This young man right over here. It lubricates the locomotive. What is that called for extra credit? A little bit louder, can't hear you. Hydrostatic? Not hydrostatic, it's a force feed. Good guess though. So this is a force feed lubricator. Let's get him a hat. So you want to come up and pick out a hat? John, why don't you come up here for me? So this is essentially a hydraulic pump that delivers oil. This is the front of the engine. This is what it looks like when we were taking things apart, cleaning it. This is what it looks like now. All of those big heavy-duty parts, making all of those new again. And that's a chance of a lifetime to be able to take a machine, take the blueprints that we have thanks to the Union Pacific Historical Society. Is Greg Gardner here? There's Greg and Paul. So our friends and partners in the UPHS, Union Pacific Historical Society, archived all of the blueprints. Not, nearly all of them. And we have them available electronically, and if you're interested, you could buy a set of them at their website, uphs.org. Okay. Here we are in the front end. Look at the size of this locomotive. Looking down, all the nice new equipment. We were really busy, but I'd jump on a man lift and take pictures. I wanted to document this process. Putting the locomotive together, that's the front engine. That front engine represents, that's another neat picture, another neat shot. So this represents, I'm going to point to the pieces over here. This big giant piece of steel is a big forging, and it's over 2 inches thick. And that is where the bronze, it's called a liner, that's attached to the boiler. That's where that bears down on the weight of the front engine. Anybody want to take a guess what that front engine weighs? If the 844 weighs 454 tons, and that effectively is the same frame, it's a 4-8 arrangement. It's got 4 pilot wheels and the front engine, which is 4 axles or 8 wheels. If the 844 engine and tender loaded are 454 tons, what do you think that weighs? Take a guess.
40 tons.
40 tons? That's a good guess. It's just under 90 tons. 90 tons. And it's not all put together yet either at this point. So just one heck of a process. More new parts. This is part of the suspension system. The old Moffett Valleys had these as well. I don't expect anybody to really recognize what in the heck that thing is, but it's brand new. Because when you take the old parts and you look at them and you've got to invest time and labor and you want it to be really quality, you discover pretty quickly that you're going to put a lot of time and labor into something that when you're done with it, it's going to be a little bit tweaked, a little bit rusty, and it's already been worked on many, many times. This is a part of the boiler plate. We made this die, and it's in a hydraulic press, and we heated that piece of boiler plate up to just under 1800 degrees, and now we're squishing it between those handmade dies that we made. So here you can kind of see that piece that I referred to a minute ago, part of the suspension system. All new springs, all new pins, just such a cool process. Before I get going, I'm getting more and more excited the more I get into this. Does anybody have any questions about any of this that we can delve off into the technical world a little bit if you're interested? Yes.
How much of the big boy is original? if I may
How
ask?
much of the big boy is original? Roughly, on the big component side, probably 40%. So we really got into this. So here's this piece that we just made. There it is, right there. You can kind of see the outline of it. That's called an elephant ear. And when American Locomotive Company and Union Pacific designed these boilers, they did it by hand. They had a lot of standards that they were working off of, a lot of engineering documents, lots of calculations. And when they put them into service, they were cracking in a few locations. Well, that's okay. Just weld a reinforcing plate. Well, when we took the locomotive apart, we were going to disassemble that boiler to make sure that boiler is 100%. So we removed those plates because as we removed the inside of the firebox, so I can get to that one here. I'll refer to that in a minute. The inside of the firebox, we needed to take that out. I remember Paul was telling me, he was almost apologetic. You remember that conversation, Paul? So he joined the museum in 1989, and over the years, there was some water that would get down inside the smokestack or get down inside the whistle, and it would go down into the front where the smokestack is, and the water would work its way back through the tubes and flues, and it would pool in the firebox. Well, you're talking decades worth of Mother Nature and coal ash, which has sulfur in it, which makes sulfuric acid. Well, the metal was eroded, and he was very apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry, this is eroded. And I'm like, oh, so what? We're going to replace it. We're going to cut it all out and make it new. So I remember that conversation. Remember that day, Paul? More new cool parts. Here's the chain that a lot of people talk about. People ask, what's the chain for? Well, the chain drives that lubricator. Remember we talked about that hydraulic lubricator? Well, this is on the front engine, and there's no other place for it up here, so it has to be back here. And we installed this, which is an extra reservoir, so there's more oil. So we can run about 80, 90, almost 100 miles before we have to fill that up again. And that's another part of the beautiful work we've done. That's the link. All that is brand new stuff. This is called a trunnion. There's going to be a test, so I want you to pay attention. This is the link trunnion. There's actually a needle bearing here, and there's one on the other side, and that's what suspends this. These are all new, beautiful tapered bolts with a tapered dowel pin. This is forged steel, nitrided, heat-treated wear surfaces. This is a beautiful machine. Do you need to make a new part like that? I think so. You could get away with the older one, but again, you're going to weld it up. And when you weld it, that heats the metal up, which changes things. It's not going to be quite right. So we make it all new again. There's another shot of it. So, all right, one more trivia question. Who's going to, Paul, would you mind, or Anna, are you available? Would you pick out a hat for us? Oh, John's already got one. Trivia question. What is this right here? Anybody know what that is right there? Anybody familiar with the old Denver and Salt Lake, Moffett Malleys, RailFans? Carl?
Centering device.
Oh, I should have said, Carl, you can't answer him. Carl, if Carl do you work or volunteer at the Forney?
I work there.
Okay, he works there. So he's done tireless work at the 4005. All right, well, that's right. Perfect answer. That is the centering device, and of course this is new. This is not new, but we've reconditioned it. And there's a small little rod in here. You look at this rod and you think, how in the world is this rod going to make anything happen? Because it's about 1.25 inches in diameter, about the size of my wrist. Well, what that does is when the locomotive goes into a curve, there's a set of springs in there, and it begins to push the boiler over. So when it's like a big centipede, when you look at it when it's going around a curve, well, that's what that is, a centering device. And it pushes that boiler, those springs begin to compress. And all it is acting on this casting and this little pin right there. That's how it works. So when we go around curves, we grease all this up every morning. We clean it all up. We clean this slide plate off. We call that a wear liner. It's got these lubrication lines where that oil's pumping in there, and that oil's just dripping out everywhere. You can see it on the right side of my shirt here. It's just dripping out everywhere. Well, when we get into some big curves, you'll actually see this line will be all the way over here. And you'll see this. We call it the tidal wave. That oil pools up on there. And when you go into a curve, it pushes about maybe a quart of oil. And then it just drips and oozes down the side. Well, that's why they got rid of the steam locomotive. They're not very efficient. There's another cool shot there. Putting the locomotive back together, all the cool things. So over the years, I've given these presentations, and I always pick different pictures. But if you're not a technical person, you're probably thinking, I can't even make any sense of all this stuff. Well, that's because you can't usually see this, because the front of the engine is here. This is where the headlight is going to be mounted here. And all of this up here, this is your headlight, this is the number plate. And all of this is not visible. This connects to the smoke box. This is the exhaust for the front engine only. Because this has two sets of cylinders, here they are here. Here's the valve on the left front, here's your left front cylinder. And then back here, out of sight that you can't see, is the rear engine. So when this locomotive is traveling, it makes a really distinct sound, and that's what you're hearing, those 4 cylinders working. That connection here, the original piece here was made of cast iron. And if anybody knows about welding, well, cast iron is kind of tough to work with. You can certainly fix it, but it's a little bit tricky. Well, by the time you take all the time and effort in welding it, why not just make a new piece? So that's called a weld fabrication. A big piece of seamless steel pipe. And I can crawl through this. That's how big it is. I can crawl through this area. Just enormous. Big giant springs in the suspension system. When we took this apart, now remember, this locomotive had worked for just under 18 years. And all the oil that was dripping off of the underside was just coated everywhere. And then the locomotive sat from 1961 until we went to pick it up in 2013. This was literally completely encapsulated in what we call road grime. So what we needed to do was get underneath the locomotive to every one of these locations and free all of this up so the springs could actually move, because it was encapsulated and solidified with that hard grease and gunk. When we got it home again, we just took a cutting torch and cut all of this out. This is called a safety hanger. You see we haven't quite tightened those bolts up. All the new bolts, all the new nuts, all of this stuff is all new. This is the original safety hanger, of course. And what the safety hanger does is there's a little piece that comes through here. I think it's the next picture. See if I can show it to you. The safety hanger, or excuse me, the spring hanger fits up here. If it should break, these are going to collapse down, and they're big enough they could derail the locomotive. So everything under a steam locomotive has a safety hanger, something to catch it, something to stop it from having a catastrophic failure. Another neat picture here, the brake rigging, big expensive brake shoes. I think I've got another trivia question. So brake shoes. Who can tell me, just guess, if you're within $100, I'll give you the hat. What does one of these brake shoes cost? Now remember, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 on just one axle. So who wants to guess how much one of those brake shoes weighs? Or excuse me, how much they cost? Yes?
700.
700. A little bit high. Yes, sir?
400.
How much?
400.
400. Now we're getting closer. What over here?
300.
300. Oh, you're 50 bucks. You're right in there. Those are $250 a piece. So you have $1,000 worth of brakes for just one axle. So looking at this, now remember we've got this part of the track is removed so you can see this. You can't normally get under here. How are you going to fix that? If you're out in the middle of California or we're on a big trip, how are you going to fix that? You're not. A couple of them you can actually get out. But most of those brake shoes you can't get out. You have what's called a pit, and that's what this is. You can climb down in there. And the pits are only about 4 feet, so you got to crouch down when you're underneath there. You have to have a pit to do the work. And that's a nice segue into a quick conversation I'd like John to have. John, where'd you go? Where did John go? Come on over here. So I want John to explain part of his duties as a student fireman, what it's like rolling under the engine. Give us a couple minutes of what it's like staying clean.
In a nutshell, it's absolutely filthy, but it's an essential part of our operation, because if something were to fail on the road, like Ed said before, why we have the safety hangers, it could potentially derail the locomotive. So every time we have a layover day and have the time, we crawl, Jimmy and I crawl under the locomotive, and everything is heavily scrutinized. We check the oil in the driver boxes that houses the roller bearings and the axles. We check the oil, make sure there's nothing going wrong inside. We're looking for loose bolts, missing safety hangers, pins, just anything that doesn't look right. We're cleaning, constantly inspecting so we don't have any problems while we're underway. Lubricating things, there's some lateral motion devices that you probably might have seen a picture. They're painted yellow and red so they're easily identified so you can see them. Oh yeah, the reason why they're painted yellow is because that's Ed's favorite color.
All right. Well, by design, this presentation has 300 slides, and we're just about toward the end of things. If you were in charge of putting together a presentation for a big boy, which pictures would you include? I feel sorry for the first group of people that ever attended my preservation in Rail Giants. I think it was like 2.5 hours long. And I was having the time of my life. But so with that, we're going to wrap it up here pretty quick. Here's a piece of insulation, and that's all the tubes and flues that we're putting in there. That was the very first tube that we put in. You know, just neat work, just beautiful work. You know, I just love hard work. I don't know why I do, but I enjoy it. And I like to do certain parts of the critical work, or the work that's not necessarily enjoyable, and let others do the work to help me on the outside. So they've got to take all these big tubes and flues. We have a crane, because these things are heavy, 180 pounds a piece. And we've got to put those things in there, so they bring them in and they get them, and I've got to pick the end of them up with the strap here and start running them in there. Well, little by little, you run yourself out of room, and it's exhausting. And you're running there 21 feet between tube sheets, and you're crouched over and you're lifting these and put them in the other end, and you know, and before you know it, you're done. So I wanted to take a few minutes and take some pictures of this. This is actually the 844 here. We did some beautiful work on it. Those are the pistons, beautiful work, brand new roller bearings made by SKF. That's a neat story in itself. Just beautiful work. So with that, I would like to open it up for any questions that you might have. We've gone over just by a few minutes, but I figured this would be a nice stopping point. Like I said, I could go for a few more hours, but it's such an amazing opportunity for us that they allow us to do this. And we don't, it's not lost on us. Brand new rebuilt air compressor right up here. There's 2 of those. We're holding this piston up, so that's 24 inches in diameter. I see another trivia question coming. What was the original cylinder dimension on the 4000 class locomotives? Anybody tell me? Original cylinder dimension. Oh, Jeff's gonna get it. Go ahead, Jeff.
23
3/4, that's right. And this is Jeff Floor. He's one of our conductors, soon to be engineer. He works out of Gary, and he comes along and helps us on the crew from time to time. He's a Chicago Northwestern fan, for those rail fans that are familiar with that railroad. That's right. Well, Jeff, you already got a cool hat. You want another one?
Give it to somebody in the crowd.
Okay, I'll let you do that. So Jeff's right. So the engine runs for a lot of years, and because it's all metal in there and it's wearing back and forth and it's going, how many times a mile is this thing moving? 296 revolutions a mile. That piston, what's going to wear out? And as it does, you reestablish the diameter, you machine it rounding in. Well, when we put the locomotive together, we machined this out to 24 inches. So it's out to what we call, it's almost to the final turning. So 24 by 32. And where's Ted at? So the other reason we did that is that we didn't want to have to make the 3/4 symbol because it was really hard to paint and we were in a hurry. Because we talk about things like that. You know, it's got to be exact. You know, some people are going to say, oh, it's not right, you didn't put this. Well, it's not 3/4, it's 24. So we put 24 by 32. Remember that day? All right, well, that's about it, everybody. I'm going to stick around a little bit and answer any questions if you'd like. John Sherman?
Any chance of running 844 this year?
Chance of running 844 this year, although we never say no, we don't have any plans this year. As much as we love to run that locomotive, like I said, it's the Air Force One of the UP. We're just going to announce here before too long the trips that we will be running. It'll be a much slower schedule. Any more questions, anybody? Yes, sir?
Can you update us on if there's any chance of the big boy going through the Moffat Tunnel?
The big boy going through the Moffat Tunnel. Well, that's like anything, based on whatever our needs would be. That's my old territory, so I would like to do that. It's on a kind of a list that I would like to see done, but it all really depends on what our public relations objectives are. Good question. Sir?
I was wondering, historically, when you had 70 to 100 years ago, when you had locomotive engines everywhere, how did they logistically have enough coal in all the places to supply all the engines and water? I mean, how were they supplied? With coal cars, or did they use conveyors, or what happened?
His question was, from a logistical standpoint, how did they determine where they needed the coal and water? And that goes way back to when they first built the Transcontinental Railroad. Like all railroads, those locations of where your cities were laid out typically were next to a good spring or maybe a proximity to a mine. Jim Ehrenberger can tell stories about, for example, the logistics of the steam locomotive, and they evolved over the years because you always want more efficient equipment, just like today. That 300 horsepower turbocharger I told you about, well, you wanted your locomotives to go farther on the resources, but they would determine what the capabilities, the average capability of that locomotive, and that's where they put those facilities. And they were enormous facilities staffed by water service people, and you've got the people to attend to the mechanism that moves the coal from the hoppers. You've got a train that has to take dozens of cars of coal from Rock Springs, from Hannah, wherever that coal is coming from, and then transit by rail with the crew, with the locomotive, with the caboose. Look at the logistics. And then once you get it there, now you've got all these cars of coal, hundreds and hundreds of tons of coal, and you've got to put it up into this What was the coal at, was it 1,000 tons at Harriman? What was the coal chute?
Oh, I don't know that one.
Might have been 500 tons, I believe.
Cheyenne was 500,000.
500,000 gallons of water, yeah.
We had four tracks under that chute to dump coal into.
Jim was saying that the coal chute at Cheyenne had 4 tracks underneath it. And I want to say that was 1,000 tons, I want to say. And 1,000 tons with a locomotive taking the average load of 20 tons. Big boys were 28, other locomotives were smaller. Challengers 25 in that range. It won't take that many locomotives to deplete that. So you had cars of coal coming in constantly, had coal staged. If there was going to be a coal strike, a railroad would prepare for that and have thousands of tons of coal stored in a big giant pile. I mean, they thought of everything. So that's how they did it. Just like today, our logistics are the same. We map it all out, we strategize. They are usually a 14 to 16 inch diameter main that comes direct from the refinery to most rail yards. Rawlins, Wyoming is that way, Cheyenne is that way, North Platte, Salt Lake City, you know, any of these big infrastructures, you don't really think of that behind the scenes. The water was a whole other problem. So here's a quick picture of the driver with, I do like the color yellow and orange. The guys tease me about Ronald McDonald. But that helps you when you're underneath the locomotive. Because it's dark under there, you've got your headlight on your head. But it's just kind of a neat way to look at that. It's an important mechanism there, controls the lateral motion. And that was another neat advanced design of the engine. So here we are, here we go. One more trivia question, we've got a few more. So this is the main driver, driver number 7, axle number 7, and those stencils are from the 1950s, by the way. So we've got this picked up, we're swinging it up in the air, it's about 10 feet in the air. How heavy is that? Anybody want to guess? How heavy is that main driver? Don't be shy, yes sir?
Maybe around 2 tons.
2 tons. 2 tons. How many pounds is 2 tons?
4,000.
4,000 pounds. Okay, a little bit heavier. Another hand back there, sir? Anybody?
15,000.
15,000. We're getting warmer. We're getting warmer. Good guess. Yeah. Yes.
17,000?
How many?
17,000?
17,000. Boy, we're getting closer.
18?
18. We're creeping up on it.
20.
20. Bam. 20. 10 tons. 10 tons. How much does your pickup truck weigh?
12,000 pounds.
This is just one axle. So, did you happen to notice when we were watching these great videos that these gentlemen made, did you happen to notice the tripod shaking as that locomotive went over the bridge? Well, it's shaking because there's 8,000 pounds of counterbalance just right here and right over here. And this giant pin is enormous. That giant pin weighs 500 pounds. So that's just one heck of a big machine. All right, did we get who got the hat? We got the hat right over there. All right. Okay. Here's another shot of that really cool picture there. This is part of that hydraulic oil pressure system called the force feed lube line. This is Ted's handiwork. Ted is an outstanding craftsman. You got your model trains here, Ted?
Oh, that's pretty, Texas.
When I first met Ted when I was 17 and went over to his house, he had an excellent Rio Grande Railroad in his crawl space. What a masterpiece it was. And I just had a hunch when I called him in 2010, excuse me, this guy's going to be really good at these kind of little projects. So he does our air brakes, and he did this. So he hand bent. This is heavy duty copper. This isn't something you're getting down at the corner hardware store. This is special order heavy wall copper. And then it's insulated in a Kevlar sleeve. And we handmade, we CNC'd all of these custom pieces. Because you can't find anything like this. McMaster Carr doesn't even have anything this heavy duty, or any of the suppliers that would supply an industry. There's nothing available, so you got to make it. And that's something that I always wanted to do. So when I was a younger person, I learned how to machine. I went to school one time, 7th grade shop class, and that just planted the seed somewhere in there. And it goes back earlier than that. I just love machining things. So we bought some CNC, which is a computerized machine, and we can make all of this stuff. Because if you try to go with something at the hardware store, not to impugn a hardware store, but a hardware store isn't going to live in the 1940s big boy. So that's some heavy duty stuff. And that's why the Locomotive is a Swiss watch. And there's those little, that's part of what John looks at. He's looking at the oil level, again painted, so you can see it. All right, folks, well, I better stop there, or I'm just gonna, before you know it, it's gonna be 2. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, by all means, you're welcome to stay around. And thank you very much for coming.